Welcome to the FCS Edge, where this week the secret password is Busted Bracket. I'm Craig Haley of Stats Reform and theanalyst.com, along with Zach McKinnell of FCS Football Central on SI. Zach, we had quite the weekend this past weekend. How you doing today?
Man, feeling good. I think this is probably one of the, looking back over the past few years, probably the most excited I've been, Craig, to watch the playoffs and see how they play out all the way. Man, we're gonna have a Villanova won what, '09, I believe
Yes.
it was. And we have a bunch of teams that could be first-time national champions. Montana State hasn't won since 84. Montana hasn't won since the early 2000s, Craig. We are in for like an all-time finish here, man. I could not be more excited to talk about it.
Certainly a unique year here in the playoffs. Well, the producer of the FCS Edge, of course, is Graham Bell. This week we have a lot to talk about. As Zach just mentioned, let's get right to it. We had 3 more road winners this past week. That brings it to 6 in the first 2 rounds. 6 is actually tied for the most, or it is the most since 2017. Just been a wild playoff so far. We kind of expected it after the seedings and the pairings didn't go quite the way we thought. And we're in for a wild ride. So the big story, of course, is North Dakota State eliminated. They lost to Illinois State in the round of 16 after 15 straight years of making it to the quarterfinal round. Wow, you mentioned this is a different year. I mean, with NDSU out, Zach, who's the favorite and where are we headed? I mean, if we have a new first-time champion, if it's not Villanova, Montana State, what are you looking at there for a different kind of champion?
Yeah, I think you look at that left side of the bracket, and the favorite to come out of it and get to Nashville is maybe one of the more intriguing teams in Tarleton State. And this is a team that, Grant, they've only been eligible for the postseason twice, and it's only the second year they've been eligible to even be here. Man, wouldn't that be such a remarkable run to win the national title only 2 years after being eligible for the postseason? And I think they're the favorite to come out of the left side, which gives them a really good shot. And for them, it's really good that the teams on the other side, you got South Dakota, you have Montana State. It's going to be a gauntlet. I'm not saying that Tarleton couldn't get upset along the way, because I think Villanova is playing their best football right now. And I think UC Davis and Illinois State have improved late in the season as well. I mean, Illinois State entered the playoff, Craig, as a team that lost by 30 points to Southern Illinois the last week of the season. And here they are now, just has suffocated 2 really, really good teams. So, I mean, I think this one's a toss-up. I think if you're asking for a favorite here, though, I do still lean one of the 2 Montanas, especially with how Montana, in particular, has been playing. Now, they got to go to Bozeman, and that's going to be super difficult in the semis. But, man, they just put up 50 points against South Dakota State. And I know it's not a South Dakota State team that was a national title favorite, but, Craig, the one thing you could say about that team is they had a pretty good defense. And Montana just moved the football it just smoothly right after they started clicking. I think right after the first quarter, they got whatever they wanted. I think one of the 2 Montanas, but man, I would still say keep an eye on Tarleton, because that scheme is so unique. Todd Whitten is an underrated coach, and man, they might have what it takes to make an unexpected push for this national championship.
Yeah, I mean, hearing all the scenarios that you just mentioned, it's all a big blur, because this loss by North Dakota State, very unexpected. They were a heavy favorite, even though Illinois State plays them all the time, played them tough for 3 quarters in the regular season. You just naturally felt, the Bison were going to just keep advancing, especially to the quarterfinal round where they had been to for 15 straight years. So, I mean, Illinois State 29-28 in this shocker, 15 points in the final 3 minutes in the Fargo Dome. I mean, they deserve to win. I mean, they overcame Tommy Rittenhouse throwing 5 interceptions. They overcame a pick 6, a punt and return touchdown. He had Rittenhouse threw the 2 late touchdowns to Sobkowitz, and then Scotty Preston with the 2-point conversion catch from Rittenhouse. They dominated in an incredible way, and in many ways you could say Illinois State is being overlooked, because all the talk is on North Dakota State losing, when it really, you could also say, hey, you know what, the Redbirds earned it time of possession was 42 minutes, dominated, first downs, yardage. I know you have to be impressed by this performance by the Redbirds.
Yeah, I think we fall into that a lot, Craig, especially you see, not just FCS media, but I think college football media as a whole. It's always if a team gets upset, well, what did at the FBS level, what did Ohio State do to lose this game? What did North Dakota State do to lose this game? Well, sometimes you just get outplayed, and it's nothing that they did. It's just Illinois. I'll be honest, Craig, like watching this game, Illinois State looked like the better team. I mean, outside of that first touchdown from North Dakota State, they could not move the football. They had a special teams touchdown, they had a pick six, and then they had a one play touchdown drive that was off an interception that they returned to, I think, the 4-yard line. Craig, after that, Cole Payton had nothing for Illinois State's defense. They got after Payton. They had an amazing pass rush. The DBs were locked in after that first touchdown they gave up. And on the flip side, Illinois State was just trying to hand this game to NDSU. If you throw 5 picks in the Fargo Dome, Craig, me and you, if you would have told me and you that Rittenhouse would have had 5 interceptions, me and you would have said North Dakota State by 40 plus. It's actually the opposite. If he doesn't throw 5 picks, Illinois State probably wins this game by 30, 40 points. I mean, they outplayed NDSU in every single aspect of the game. And I think you saw all the small flaws that get overshadowed by winning all year. And it's hard to criticize a team that keeps winning, right? If I come on here and say, well, NDSU's downhill rushing attack wasn't elite this year, NDSU fans would say, well, guess what? We keep winning, and we still have Cole Payton making these plays. Well, Illinois State exposed all the flaws this weekend. They shut down the run, they boxed in Cole Payton, and they shut down this NDSU offense. And then defensively, I don't have any qualms about how they play defensively because you force 5 interceptions, your offense is supposed to bail you out and get a win. But man, how about Brock Spack for trusting Tommy Rittenhouse, Craig, in the most crucial moments? I threw 5 picks, but you know what we're going to do, Craig? We're going to put it in the air. We're going to go, you're our leader of this team. Go win us the football game. And if you saw right after he threw that game winning touchdown, man, he put the 2 fingers up immediately.
Did.
And Brock Spack trusted Tommy Rittenhouse to make a play to win the game. I love the call. Don't take it to overtime. Go get the win on the road, and that's how legends are made, man. So shout out to Rittenhouse and Brock Spack for having the guts to call that.
Yeah, phenomenal game, phenomenal effort. I mean, I mentioned the 42 minutes and 42 minutes, 1 second of time of possession. That is the most an opponent has had in North Dakota State's Division I history. 22 seasons. They did dominate this game. Take away those picks or the interceptions, including the pick six. I mean, yeah, it would have been much more than a 1-point win. But you went in the Fargo Dome where the Bison were 38-1. That is just saying something. 38-1 in the playoffs. So it has changed everything. Now Illinois State, they're going to take on UC Davis, and UC Davis is hosting a quarterfinal. They're the 8th seed. They beat Rhode Island 47-26. They were trailing by 9 in the second quarter, and then 36 straight points. Caden Pinnick was phenomenal. The poise he showed as a freshman in his first playoff game. Thoughts on Pinnick and the Aggies overall?
He's been on an absolute heater right now. I mean, the way he played at Sac State, the way he played this past weekend, I do think Rhode Island played well in this game. I don't think, we saw New Hampshire just go get the wheels beat off of them by South Dakota State in the first round. The CAA represented a little bit better here. Villanova, we're going to talk about them later, but I thought Rhode Island played really well. They were leading at halftime. They played well for about 3 quarters, but I just think UC Davis, you saw how good this offense could be, and it comes in waves, and your defense just has to be locked in because you never know what Tim Plow is going to be dialing up. And I think you saw in the second half they made the right adjustments. Pennant got comfortable, and I think you've got to give UC Davis's defense a lot of credit, Greg. They have a ton of injuries right now, and I thought that would maybe catch up to them at some point, and we'll see if it will later in this run. But the defense played outstanding in the second half. They found a way to get a handful of key stops. They put the offense in good situations, and the offense helped the defense out by scoring finally. Jordan Fisher, and then also to that wide receiving core, then Ian Simpson at tight end's a matchup nightmare in the red zone. You see them utilize him in so many different ways, and he had a touchdown this weekend. I can't wait to see this upcoming weekend game because you have a team that's really hot, being a little bit overlooked. But then UC Davis has been a team, Craig, that's been overlooked. Everyone's, including ourselves, said they don't deserve the 8th seed. Man, so one of these teams is going to get to the semifinals, and man, I can't wait to see. It will be a defensive battle for Illinois State, but then you got that UC Davis offense. That's such a unique matchup, man. I can't wait to preview that game.
Yeah, that's just a fun game, and it'll be the fourth one on Saturday for the quarterfinals. All right, Montana. You mentioned them earlier. 50-29 beat the Jackrabbits at home. I mentioned 36 straight points for UC Davis, 30 straight for Montana to just turn that game around. They had the most points against South Dakota State. You know, the 50, and the most yards, 552, I believe it was, since 2018. That's how long it's been since the Jackrabbits gave up that much. I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, totally impressive about the Grizz, but when you look at North Dakota State and South Dakota State losing in the same weekend in the round of 16, is this just a one-off year, or is this showing you something different with the FCS going forward?
I mean, listen, I've been the one to say that I think there's more parity in the subdivision than people are thinking. But I do think it was a little bit shocking. At the end of the day, I was very high on NDSU making a run. I do think they were the best team, and they just didn't play well this weekend. I really didn't think South Dakota State was a national title contender this year, especially as we saw the season play along. So maybe it's just a one-off thing. And this, I thought this was supposed to be a rebuild year for South Dakota State anyway. They lost a ton of players. This was Chase Mason's first year at quarterback. He gets hurt. Coach Dan Jackson had to really kind of revamp this roster. They look, because I don't think you look at the starters, yes, they lost a ton of starters, but a bunch of these guys played on last year's team, right? And now had to step into a starting role. Well, once they got banged up with injuries, Craig, they lost a ton of depth. A lot of those freshmen and guys that they were going to count on transfer with Jimmy or potentially went elsewhere. I just think the losses added up there. I don't know if South Dakota State should have expected a national championship this year. I do think though, if you look at NDSU, man, like it would be silly for me to say that this is the new FCS and they're going to be one and done more times than more times than just this year. They can absolutely turn around and win the national championship next year, and it's more than likely that's going to be the outcome. So I do think this might have been just a one-off season, but I think it's good for the FCS, Craig. This is a chance for some of these other fan bases to get invested. We always hypothetically talk about what would the national championship look like without one of the big Dakota schools. Well, Craig, we're in a new city this year in Nashville. ABC, Monday night, what does the TV ratings look like? What is the attendance? Maybe some of these fan bases are really fired up now because now they actually do see a path to win. Because Tarleton had what, almost 20,000 at their game this weekend? I got a feeling the Tarleton fans are going to travel. Villanova's fans have traveled in the past to these national championship games. Maybe they're reinvigorated, and we'll see what happens with Illinois State, UC Davis. And we already know if one of the Montana schools get there, Craig, those fan bases are going to deliver. So I think this is a really, really good test for the FCS to show. And we have fan bases outside of those two Dakota State schools. We can really carry the subdivision further, even though they are not in the national championship.
It's funny you mentioned the crowd at Tarleton. I mean, over 20,000, phenomenal. I went back and looked at last year when they hosted on Thanksgiving weekend. It was under 4,000. It just shows you the difference between playing Thanksgiving weekend and playing, the second round in early December. I mean, just, it's just hard to overcome the lack of fans in Thanksgiving weekend. But all right, Montana, next they're going to play South Dakota. I mean, Illinois State was the team of the week, of course, but the scores that Montana put up against South Dakota State and South Dakota put up, winning 47-0 on the road at Mercer, those were almost as impressive. I mean, the Coyotes intercepted Braden Atkinson 4 times. They turned that into 24 points, and there's your ball game. The last 3 losses for Mercer, they've won twice here in the playoffs and 3 playoff appearances, but the last 3 losses to Dakota schools, the Bison, the Jackrabbits, now the Coyotes, a combined 119-7. And this is a very good program. What does it say about the difference from the Dakotas, from Missouri Valley, to, say, the SoCon right now?
Real quick, I touch on your Montana point.
Mhm.
Yacht's development from last year to this year has still not been talked about enough. How good is he? And they got Eli Gilman. That offense is so elite. And then them getting Keon Loud back at corner was huge for that team. And you saw a difference in that secondary. But moving to Mercer, this is the game. There were a ton of other media people and fans saying, man, how did anyone think Mercer had a chance? And that they shouldn't have been a seed, all this stuff. Again, this is just one of these, I think, instances, Craig, that we focus on the losing team and how overrated they were or whatever. I just don't think Mercer played well, Craig. And I think this might just be all of us, including some South Dakota fans, completely overlooked how well South Dakota's been playing down the stretch here. And Aiden Bauman is playing at an elite level. LJ Phillips, Lorenzo Finner, even Carson Fletcher emerging as a number two back behind LJ Phillips. This team's on a roll now, Craig, and I just think their statistical profiles may be a bit skewed from their early season struggles. If you look at the past month, maybe 2 months, they are playing outstanding. And the only really slip up they had, Craig, was against Illinois State, who that loss might have a different, look to it now, given what we saw last weekend. I really think we underrated South Dakota. But for Mercer, I do want to just add this, like, yes, that their three Dakota losses are bad, but can we not can we remember that they lost to a generationally good South Dakota State team that won the national title in Brookings? And then the next team they lost to was in Fargo and also happened to win the national championship. So it's not like they were playing just the random Missouri Valley teams, and we'll see how far South Dakota goes. If they go on and win the national title, someone's going to be really begging for Mercer in next year's bracket if they get there. But I also want to remind people this is a Mercer program that just kind of got back up and started in 2013. They just made their first ever FCS playoff appearance just 2 or 3 years ago. This is a program that's up and coming. I do think you just have to take your lumps in the playoffs. It's taking them a little bit of time to figure out what they need to do to compete against these elite teams. But for people who are said that Mercer had no business being in this game or how could any analyst pick them, we did see this Mercer team go toe to toe with UC Davis, who also happens to be in the quarters, has a really good chance to get to the semifinal. They were driving down to tie that game in the fourth quarter, and that was without Braden Atkinson. So to say this team showed no signs of being a good team is just ridiculous. I just think it was a bad matchup for them. They didn't play a good game, and South Dakota came out so motivated, and they proved a point this past weekend. And how about Travis Johansson for taking this team from where we saw them losing to Lamar all the way here potentially to get to a semifinal with a win on the road against Montana this weekend? What a coaching job by him in his first season.
Yeah, I think the Mercer point's excellent because, you know, North Dakota State losing. Yeah, we chalk it up as a bad day. Why can't we do that with Mercer? I mean, they were impressive this year, and Braden Atkinson was off the charts all season. He had a bad day. They had a bad day. It does happen in a one-game scenario. Sometimes it just snowballs on you. All right, so South Dakota's an 11 seed. We have an unseeded Illinois State. They've both advanced to the quarterfinals. We also have a 12 seed, Villanova. 14-7, they win at Lehigh. Pat McQuaid with the late touchdown pass to Braden Reed. They get a fumble deep in Villanova territory, a turn takeaway. What's your takeaway on the Villanova? I mean, 2 straight games giving up 7 points.
Yeah, just you want to talk about a bend but don't break defense. Lehigh was in scoring position over and over and over and just could not score. Missing field goals, turnover on downs, a fumble, just they just shot themselves in the foot all game. I thought Lehigh moved the ball really well. Like if you go just watch the game, you're like, man, they should have scored like 30 points. And Villanova's just consistently made the plays. And how about Pat McQuaid? Listen, Greg, I've saw him play in person when I went down to that Nichols Sacramento State game a few years ago. I never saw him playing at this level, man. I've really kind of was skeptical when Villanova added him this all season at quarterback, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how that's going to work. He's exceeded all my expectations, and maybe I've been one of the ones to underrate Villanova just a little bit. That defense is playing well. They got some young guys in that secondary, man, that just continue to get better and better. And I just think offensively, you look at that run game, it wasn't there this weekend, but Pat McQuaid showed I don't need a run game. Just give me a chance to win the game. And he made the crucial throws when they needed. And this defense forcing the fumble late to win the game, and it shows that this team can win even when they play maybe their D or even C game offensively. What a win for Villanova, and I think they might be the most underrated team in the field, Craig, because listening to just the national perspective from other national reporters and fans, and I've heard people mention Montana State to win the title. I've heard people mention Montana, Tarleton State, UC Davis, Illinois State, South Dakota, and where's the Villanova love? I mean, they've been on a tear here, and I think you talk about not giving a winning team enough credit. Everyone focused on Harvard last week. Maybe Villanova is just playing that well too, and Lehigh was a hot team, undefeated going into last weekend. Man, what a win for Villanova in this program, and I'm excited to see how they match up against the team we're going to talk about next in Tarleton State.
You can credit Mark Ferrante, the Villanova coach. I mean, I mentioned before that, they've given up 7 points in back-to-back playoff games, Harvard and Lehigh. It's actually the last 2 years, they've only given up 5 touchdowns in 4 games. Mark Ferrante, it gets them to dictate the game, a gritty run style, defensive toughness. I mean, that's just phenomenal when you only give up 5 touchdowns in 4 playoff games, and here they are in a national quarterfinal. They're going to Tarleton State. I mean, Tarleton State 31-13 over North Dakota. Victor Gabelis played very well in this one. This is the top scoring offense in the FCS, over, I believe, 44 points a game. You have to like the Texans here. I mean, what they've been doing all season long.
There was a lot of people eating crow. If I got to eat crow about Mercer, there's a lot of Missouri Valley fans that have to eat crow about this game because all season, Craig, we've heard Tarleton's overrated and Tarleton isn't going to be able to do this in the playoffs, and that offense isn't going to work against a Missouri Valley team. Craig, they came out and punched North Dakota in the mouth. And now North Dakota played well in red zone defense and held them to some field goals early, but offensively, Craig, North Dakota had nothing for Tarleton. Tarleton State was the more physical team. They were by far the faster team, and they executed on such a high level. And then I think as you saw the injuries pile up, the number one way to stop that slow mesh RPO system is to get pressure. Once Lance Rucker exited the game, Craig, they had no shot. I mean, those DBs had no chance. And once Tarleton started getting behind the DBs and Victor Caballos made all the right throws, North Dakota had no answer for them. And really and truly, 31-13 might not even do this game justice. I thought Tarleton was the better team from the jump, and they did such a good job slowing down the run game and then forcing some interceptions on the other side. Man, they have forced interceptions at an elite level. I mean, they're listen, Kearns in that secondary have been playing unbelievably over the past few weeks. And I think they're a really, really tough matchup for a lot of people in the field because this is a weird system, Craig. And I think people get confused. Like if you have a conference opponent every year, all the UAC opponents know how to defend the slow mesh because they see it every year. Man, when you're a team that only has a week to prepare, maybe 2, depending on the playoff scenario, it's a really, really tough thing to get used to when you're not used to seeing it every single week in conference play. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see how far they can go with this scheme. But also, it helps to have a guy like Victor Gabalis, who is a senior who's been in the moment. He knows what it takes to win a championship. And then Todd Witten, too. I always want to give the coaches credit, man. How about Todd Witten having this program here in this moment, Greg? We've all kind of said if there's a team in the South that's going to win a national championship, Tarleton is putting in the money to compete. This is their opportunity, Craig. I think if you ask Todd Witten and this Tarleton staff off the record, they would say, man, with North Dakota State going down, we should be in Nashville, and that's the expectation.
Yeah, it's been a seamless transition for Tarleton since moving to the FCS. Just, great job all around. Seamless, that'd be our other 2 second-round winners. Stephen F. Austin and Montana State are now on 11-game winning streaks, the longest in the FCS. Stephen F. Austin, they got revenge against Abilene Christian, 41-34 from a regular season loss, which was 28-20. What do you think was the difference between the regular season game and the one here that SFA won?
Sam Vidlak played like the All-American everyone thought he was going to. I think he just had like there's been times and listen, he battled injury at one point. He just had a little bit of a slow start to the season at times, and I think this is the Sam Vidlak where if he plays at this level, Craig, they can compete with anyone in the postseason. Listen, we already know what Colin Harris is, but this has been a team that's won off of defense a lot, and I think this week you saw that offense came to play. I think, what, 7.5 yards per play in this game? And how about that secondary, Craig? Does anyone in the playoffs have a better, like, number 1 and number 2 corner than what they have with Charles Demings, who's gonna be going to the Senior Bowl, probably the top corner in the NFL draft coming out of the FCS, and then Jalen Mayo is a breakout star, probably an FCS All-American this year for multiple publications, and he was a transfer from Virginia Union, man. They killed it in the transfer portal evals with some of these D2 transfers that have been top contributors for them. I like what I saw from Stephen F. Austin. This was a team they beat a really good Abilene Christian team. I wanna say that. That Abilene Christian team was legit, and this was the Abilene Christian team that had, what, 4 ranked wins coming into the postseason and beat this Stephen F. Austin team. What a job by Kobe Carthel to get this team locked in, and I thought they took a a full turn offensively. I think that was the difference here, Craig, as this was one of the best games I saw Vidlac play all season long.
Yeah. SFA, they're going to take on Montana State 21-13 over Yale in that matchup. Bobcats, held the lead most of the game, but it was tight. Obviously, Yale got it close in the end. 4 turnovers certainly helped the Bobcats. Adam Jones, certainly a big game, running the ball, catching the ball out of the backfield. We also had the heated exchange. Julius Davis afterwards, a little bit of a shove of Coach Vegan, and just a heated exchange. What's your takeaway? There's going no ramifications. He's going to play right away Friday night in this quarterfinal. What are your thoughts on the decision not to have anything a penalty for this?
Once it got clarified, I have no problem with him not getting a punishment. I think Vegan and Davis both came out and was like, "Listen, it looked way worse than maybe it was," and I do think people who haven't played the game don't really understand the emotions that can come from playing the game, and I just think in that moment, like, man, at the end of the day, man, these are still young men who are hyped up on adrenaline. It's a violent game, and like, I do just feel a little bit of sympathy for Julius Davis in this moment. And is it okay to push your coach? No, but I do think might have been taken out of context. And also, too, you don't understand. You might not understand the full context of the situation and what was going on and what he was feeling. And I think Vegan did a really, really good job of diffusing the situation and explaining it in his press conference and just saying, "Listen, man, this is still our leader of this team." And we're still going to lean on him, and we're not going to suspend him for a game. And he understands the emotion and everything, and like Julius said, he's like, "Man, I didn't react great, but man, let me explain the situation and why this isn't what it looked like." And then, Craig, at the end of the day, everyone knows how the national media is. No one wants to cover FCS like us and Sam and everyone else in the media. But then once something like this happens, we had like the New York Times and Fox News and all these people covering it and taking it completely out of context, man. I just hate that it got blown up into something that really wasn't a huge storyline in my opinion, because we see it happen all the time in football at all levels. And then once you get the added context, it becomes not as big of a story as people tried to make it.
Well, I tell you what, I root for people. I root for storylines. I root for good things for people out there. I do feel this exchange took too long to be diffused. I do like Coach Vegan's explanation. I just think it's a bad look though for the Bobcats, athletic program, that this is not leading to anything. I think at least one quarter of sitting out Friday night is warranted. I think they could even chalk it up themselves and say, hey, look, we have Adam Jones. We're still going to be okay, even if Julius sits for a while. I just think it's a bad look. I do feel like it is. It wasn't as bad as it might seem, as you mentioned, but at the same time, I just think it lingered a little too long, and maybe something should have come out of it. But hey, it was their decision. It's not anybody else's decision. So they're moving forward here to Friday night's quarterfinal. All right. We also had the SWAC championship game. Prairie View 23-21 at Jackson State. They're going to take on the MEAC champ South Carolina State in Atlanta on Saturday for the Celebration Bowl. It's funny. We thought Jackson State repeating as HBCU national champ was more of a bet. We thought this in the preseason, a strong bet than North Dakota State repeating. And here we are, both of them knocked out on the same day last weekend. Is this the Celebration Bowl still the right path for both conferences? It's the 10th year of this, national championship game.
Yeah, for sure. I try to explain this all the time to people because I get asked all the time about the Celebration Bowl and getting more HBCUs into the playoffs and things like that. At the end of the day, none of the institutions in the FCS have the profile of an HBCU where they're historically underfunded. The systemic racism they face from the government, like, and making money is important to these institutions. And until the playoffs are financially, I would say, beneficial for HBCUs to play in, and they're not going to value the playoffs, and that's fine, right? Now, the argument on the flip side for the NDSUs and the SDSUs and other schools are going to be like, well, yeah, we don't care about making money. We just want to win a national championship, and we'll make our money elsewhere. Well, HBCUs aren't in the position to do that because they're not the flagship institutions of their state. They're underfunded in their own state. They got to go with the best financial situation. And I've always argued I hate the Celebration Bowl versus FCS playoffs debate anyway. I think it's stupid. I think both are good for the visibility and the promotion of the FCS. Like, look at this weekend, man. We have back to back games on ABC that are showcasing the high level FCS football. We have the Celebration Bowl kicking us off on ABC. Right after that, we get a great game with Montana and South Dakota. How is that a bad thing for the FCS? And who cares? Like, now I've talked about what I like to see maybe week 0 since we have week 0 games now and we moved up the season. And how cool would it be to open up the FCS season, make the FCS kickoff game, make it the Celebration Bowl champs, the defending Celebration Bowl champs versus the defending national champions. Like, that would be a awesome week 0 game. Make it a neutral site in Atlanta or something, or do whatever to make it financially beneficial for either program. That would be a cool game, but we've talked about private equity and all this stuff making the playoffs more financially sustainable. If that happens, the conversation changes from a lot of people I've talked to because then if it the payouts more to go win a national championship in FCS, I think the HBCU mindset would shift. But for right now, man, you get your own bowl game. It's a special event. It's awesome. And I've been multiple times. It's a really a celebration of the entire HBCU culture. I think it's great to have both, and I really wish FCS fans and HBCU fans would stop comparing the two and let's celebrate and uplift the two because it's a really, really great promotion for the FCS either way.
Great point. I mean, I think it's named correctly. It is the Celebration Bowl. I mean, it just brings together the two HBCU FCS champions. Big crowd every year, great TV ratings. It's rewarding financially for both conferences. They're doing the right thing. They don't have the greatest history either conference in the FCS playoffs, but that's besides the point. This is just a celebration of both conferences in a big way. So I've always said this is great for both conferences. So here we are in the 10th year of it. It's just been phenomenal. We have a first time team in getting there in Prairie View A&M, taking on last year's runner up South Carolina State. So a lot to look forward to. And we're going to do that in the next segment. We're going to give our picks for the 5 games this weekend. But we're going to take a break here from the FCS Edge, and we'll be right back with our picks for this week. This is the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS Edge. Our second segment is our Pick'em segment, and we could be swayed either way on a few of these games. So let's get right to it. We have 4 FCS quarterfinals. We have the Celebration Bowl. We'll start with Friday night in the FCS playoffs. Stephen F. Austin, the number 7 seed, at Montana State, the number 2 seed, 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. They're both 11-2. They both were 0-2 at one point, and here they are, 11 straight wins, the longest active streaks in the FCS. 42 of 44 now for Montana State at home. It's quite the advantage. I'm going to have to go with Montana State. What's your pick here, Zach?
I just want to say this, Greg, and we talked a little bit about this off camera, but with NDSU losing, nothing is for certain for me. Like every game is in jeopardy now. I think SFA actually is an interesting matchup for Montana State. They have the passing attack that challenge their secondary and their defense, man. They get after the quarterback. And this is a huge test for Montana State's offensive line. Plus, you got those two elite corners I talked about earlier in the show. But I'm going to stick with the home field advantage here. I think Lampson bounces back after a sleepy game last week. And I think you even saw, even without the heated moment that we talked about with Julius Davis, Vegan was not happy with the team's performance last week. And I think that defense makes one or two key plays to win this one. I like Montana State here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little concerned running the ball here for Montana State because SFA has been so good against the run, number 3 in the nation, 88 yards per game they allow, and that front seven can really key on the run when you have such good cornerbacks, shutting down receivers. I think the home field advantage, gets it done. Maybe it's an ugly kind of, game that you slug it out like they did against Yale. They never quite pulled away from Yale, but I think they get it done. I think the star power here is tremendous. There's so many good players from the Dowlers, you mentioned Justin Lamps and the running backs. I mean, the guys on defense. Bugs Mortimer is so good on punt returns. He's the best in the nation this year. Sam Vidlak, as you mentioned, just going to be a great game. But I do think the Bobcats get it done. Now on that side of the bracket, the winner is going to take on either South Dakota or Montana. Number 11 seed South Dakota is 10-4. They're at 12-1 Montana, which is the number 3 seed. It is 3:30 p.m. Eastern Saturday on ABC. Great matchup all around. They were both so impressive this week. Who do you like here and why?
Man, I called this one a toss-up game earlier this week, man. This is a 50-50 game to me. Like, this screams upset alert if you wanna call this an upset, right? I think the 11 seed over the 3 seed would be an upset. I think South Dakota is a terrifying team to play right now, but, man, part of me, it's hard to pick against the Grizz when they're playing so well offensively, especially at home in Grizz. I think they're gonna be locked in. I think the difference here is, man, Gilman has continued to just be like the secret X factor for this team. And then also mentioned earlier, Keon Lau coming back really allows the secondary to do a bunch of different things. The one concern I do have though is if South Dakota can get the run game going, they're real aggressive with their corners, and sometimes it pays off. The other times they allow stuff over the top. That South Dakota offense could really find some success here. That's the only concern I have, but I'm gonna go Montana in a tight one-score game. I think South Dakota pushes them this weekend, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think South Dakota with Aiden Bauman, it's his 46th straight start. That's like Cam Miller kind of numbers almost. They can break off plays. LJ Phillips, your man Lorenzo Fenner. I mean, they're just big play specialists. So that's what the Grizz have to guard against. Even though it's a wide open kind of game, I think whoever kind of exerts that physicality a little more will get it done here. I just think the Grizz at home, you have to like them there. All right, the other side of the bracket, Villanova, we mentioned the 12 seed. They're 11-2, 10 straight wins, I believe it is. They're at the 4 seed. Tarleton State's 12-1. They now have home field advantage on that side of the bracket through the semis. It's a noon Eastern game Saturday on ESPN, and it's the first meeting. You always kind of like those, just unfamiliarity. Who do you like here?
Yeah, this is if there's gonna be a blowout in the first round or in the quarterfinals in this round this weekend, I do think it's this one. I don't know how stylistically Villanova matches up really well in terms of how they're gonna stop this offense because they don't have an elite pass rush, and a lot of their pass rush comes from blitzing their linebackers, and that's a dangerous game you're gonna play with this RPO because they're gonna throw it right over the top where those linebackers should have been. I think Tarleton's on a mission, man. This team was playing so well. And then also, too, they've really struggled to run the ball against Lehigh last week. I think Tarleton has the ability to take away the run. It's going to come down, do you trust Villanova to throw the ball blow for blow with Victor Cabales? I don't know. I like Tarleton in this one, man. I'm pretty confident that they find a way to get to the semifinals.
Yeah, Pat McQuaid, you mentioned how he's taken a big leap, and he has, but his efficiency has changed from when he was at Nichols. I mean, 2 interceptions all year. Villanova only 5 turnovers. That's the low of all 129 teams. That's a great stat. They have the lowest turnovers committed and the most takeaways in the FCS by far is Tarleton State, 38 overall. That could be a difference maker, but I do think Gabales passing the ball can get it done here, and I think you have to like Tarleton State at home. Now that winner is going to face either Illinois State, 10-4 off the big win over NDSU. They're at UC Davis, which is the 8th seed, a surprise team hosting here because of the NDSU's loss. They're 9-3, 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. It's an ESPN Plus game. The Road Warriors, those are the Redbirds. They're 7-0 on the road this year against FCS opponents, 13-1 the last 2 years. Of course, that one loss against FCS opponent on the road the last 2 years, it was UC Davis. They lost 42-10 last year in the second round. You have to favor here UC Davis at home, but it's really a toss-up, Zach.
Yeah, this was one of the, I mentioned the coin flip with South Dakota, Montana. This was the other game I really struggled to pick. It in this round, and it's because Illinois State's defense has been playing at a different level, man. Like when you look at how they were playing in the regular season, it wasn't the same. I do wonder if all the people that said Southeastern Louisiana was overrated have changed their tune a little bit now that we've seen Illinois State do the exact same thing to NDSU. The one big concern here I have, Craig, is this defensive line has been getting pressure on quarterbacks, and that's one area where Caden Pennick, if you can get pressure on him, he can turn into a freshman and make some key mistakes. The question is going to be, though, are they going to be able to corral Caden Pennick, who is one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the pocket? And then also, too, Tim Plow's offensive scheme is so good, and Illinois State has struggled with it. He's all last year. They had no answer for it. I'm going to lean UC Davis here at home, Craig, in a close one. I'm going against my better judgment because how do you pick against a team that just suffocated NDSU for 4 quarters? But I'm going to take a risk here. I like Plow. I think Pennick's playing well. Give me UC Davis in a close one.
It's certainly a toss-up. I'll go with the Redbirds. I think Pinnock, one of the great things, as you mentioned, is he is mobile. He's always moving around the pocket, but he can't hold the ball too long. Or yes, he could risk sacks. Batu has been great. Fisher running the ball. I mean, this is a team, UC Davis, like by the end of Saturday night could have a 3,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard receiver. They've already had the last two. Great game all around. I'm just going to go with the Redbirds getting it done on the road. It's certainly a different UC Davis team from last year when they won in the second round. A lot of the same stars are back for the Redbirds. So I'm going to go with that. Either way, it's sort of like the second round. There's a lot of close, point spreads here, a lot of close probabilities, who's going to win. So I think it is a terrific, quarterfinal round. And we mentioned earlier, we had the 10th Celebration Bowl. South Carolina State's 9-3 out of the MEAC. The SWAC champ is Prairie View A&M 10-3. 2 p.m. Eastern Saturday on ABC. First time meeting again. I mean, that's just, you wouldn't expect that when you get to the Celebration Bowl, but these two HBCUs have never played each other. It's a fun game. Who do you like in this one, Zach?
Ooh. You want to talk about an amazing matchup? I know everyone wanted to see the rubber match between South Carolina State and Jackson State here, but I think stylistically this might be a more interesting matchup. These teams mirror each other so much, Craig, and I've talked about this a few times. Two quarterbacks that have improved throughout the year that had to battle and go through QB rotations early. Two defenses that are going to be the key to the game. They do it in different ways, but they're aggressive. They like to take away what the other team does best, and then also two run games that are good but not elite. So I do think it's going to come down to which team can establish the run. I trust PV to establish the run just a bit more, and I also like the fact that they use Cam Peters in such a unique way. You look at what they did this weekend against Jackson, that QB power, they were just moving people up front. I like PV to win the line of scrimmage battle. As an O lineman myself, I'm always lean toward who wins that battle. And then also too, this is the X factor. Both these coaches are elite coaches, man. Two D2 guys that have won championships. Tremaine Jackson was just in the national championship last year at Valdosta State. I'm going to go Tremaine Jackson and PV to win their first ever Celebration Bowl. I think Tremaine Jackson gets it done year one, and what a story that is going to be for a program that I mean, has had some highs and some lows, but has not won a SWAC since what, '09, I think it was. Never been to the Celebration Bowl, man. I think Tremaine Jackson gets it done, and he sang about it earlier this year, Craig. Called his shot. He was singing Atlanta, Atlanta, and he's there now, and I think they hold the trophy at the end of the day.
Well, I picked Prairie View last week to win at Jackson State. I probably shouldn't go against them this week, but I am. I'm going to go with South Carolina State. I think Chennis Berry losing last year, he's probably motivated. South Carolina State having 3 weeks of preparation, only 1 week for a quick turnaround, and even that you lose a little bit with travel for Prairie View. I'm going to go with that as a difference maker. I think William Atkins has really come on, like you mentioned. I do think Cameron Peters may have more weapons around him on the Prairie View offense, but I'm just gonna, you know, go with that break and preparation time. It's helped the MEAC win, go 6-3 so far in this Celebration Bowl, but it's certainly a toss up kind of game. I mean, it's tremendous. This game falls sort of halfway in between the first and second semi or quarterfinals on Saturday. We also have the Friday night quarterfinal, but you basically can watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in a row this week, as opposed to so many of the games, the first 2 rounds of the playoffs being at the same time. 5-game schedule. What do you really like this weekend? I mean, to see all this happening at once.
Man, I'm just glad that I don't have to test my ADHD anymore and watch 7 games at one time. It'd be go. I love the fact that we get FCS all day and it's all in prime time all weekend. We get to kick it off Friday night, ESPN prime time, Montana State SFA. I think it's going to be a great game. And then in the morning window, man, like when people wake up, Craig, on Saturday, they're going to tune in on ESPN to see Tarleton and Villanova, man. Tarleton, one of the up and coming programs. Villanova's looking to shock the world. And then you get South Carolina State PV, both of which have huge storylines. South Carolina State looking to win their first Celebration Bowl under Chennis Berry, looking to go win their first one since, what was it, 2021. PV's never been there. So you got the Tremaine Jackson angle. You have the first year head coach angle. And then you get to follow that up on ABC with South Dakota, Montana, probably the best game of the weekend. And then if you want even more FCS action, you get Illinois State, UC Davis, with a chance for one of these teams, Craig, to be in the semifinals. No one in the world would have predicted that at the start of this, and I just think it's going to be a great weekend of FCS football. I'm glad that they space these games out a little bit because people really deserve to sit down and actually watch and enjoy these games. And we get the FCS in prime time from Friday all the way to Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and it sets up for a very good weekend of attendance. I mean, the host schools here, and then the Celebration Bowl always does well with that added interest of Prairie View getting there for the first time for their fan base. So great crowds, great players, great coaching, and hopefully great games. We will be back next week to talk about all this and also look forward to the national semifinals. Already the national semifinals next weekend. So we appreciate all the work of Graham Bell, our producer. We appreciate our viewers and listeners each week on the FCS Edge. Zach, love all the input you give her every week. You just really open our eyes on so many different topics. Thanks again. We will be back next week with more of the FCS Edge. Thanks for tuning in.